I'm going to call this meeting of the Public Health and Safety Standing Committee to order on October 8th. The minutes you sent us was September 10th.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
not
sorry.
September 24th. I thought they looked really familiar.
I'll resend them today, I'm sorry, they're on my work computer.
It's okay, we'll pass those on.
Trying to do them in the middle of helping people.
Yeah, I know the routine.
My
Okay,
brain's
Chief
too old to do
Schrock. What's some news and updates from you?
Month of September, approximately 200 calls for service, 29 citations, 43 cases generated, criminal investigations. Our seizures were approximately $2,000 worth of methamphetamine, 7 electronic devices used in criminal activity, 1 firearm. Notable calls, missing persons, some thefts, some criminal mischief, and we get a lot of suspicious activity complaints and disturbances. Those are pretty run-of-the-mill, but they do turn into casework.
Wow.
1 death threat.
Only 1 death threat?
Only one. Only one. I have the numbers here for you guys, if you'd like to take a look at them.
Oh, sure.
So I'm gonna start with you, sir. Other than that, had a conversation with a member of the school board yesterday. They're gonna be, yeah.
Was it the same one I talked to just by chance? Pardon?
Different one. She said that there has been no discussion of the SRO program on the school board, and they're putting it on the agenda for this upcoming. So she was kind of unaware that we were kind of sitting still. So.
Interesting enough, I had a conversation with a school board member yesterday also.
Mm-hmm.
I asked if they talked about it, and she talked about the presentation you had done a couple of months ago, and then I mentioned that I had reached out, and her comment was, we're aware of it, we just haven't made a decision yet. So if it's gonna be on the next agenda, I can see where those two kind of sort of align.
Well, it wasn't on the next agenda until I had that conversation last night. But from my understanding, the members of the school board were receptive with what I had to say when I was there. So I didn't get any negative feedback from the board. Yeah.
And that's in line with the feedback I got as well.
Excellent.
It was just, we just haven't made a decision yet. It's like, okay, as long as you don't need anything additional from us, let us know we have a potential candidate. The feedback that I relayed on, just to make sure we're all on the same page, was when we do have an individual we think may be a good fit for that. However, the agreement with the school board president was, when we do that, they will get a chance to interview. We'll open it up with all the folks that may be interested in our group. And what I did share, and I hope it wasn't overstepping bounds, because I think it's in my line of understanding, is if you don't think that there's anybody there who you think is acceptable, then we will go ahead and open it up wider. But you guys are definitely involved in that process. They'll be reporting to the chief of police, but the agreement was you guys get to help in the selection process or have an input.
Yes.
This person that you have in mind, are they just waiting on tenterhooks, waiting to find out?
Pretty much. They're currently a part-time employee of the cities.
Oh, okay.
Have all their certifications and everything and are good to go. Just not, I'm hopeful for it, and I would like to see it go to an existing member of the department, but if they come in and interview and the oral board isn't impressed, then it is what it is. We'll have to go elsewhere.
Whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
On that same vein, I know that we had the discussion last time on resort tax and how the resort tax board was against paying for any police officer.
No, it wasn't any police officer, it was public safety.
Public safety.
Which is, and it's not that they're against it.
They want us to give something up in order to do
Well,
it.
yeah, when we look at the budget, there is no extra money right now in resort tax without cutting something else. And their ask of us was, if you want to do that, look at this budget and tell us what you're going to cut.
Here's my...
And I will add to that, that there really was, an overall sentiment from them that they felt the feedback from the public was that, the resort tax was for the polish. We should not be using it to provide the basic services that we would be providing even if there wasn't a resort tax. And so that had to do with water and sewer and all sorts of things. The thing that's interesting to that, and we did point out, was this is one of those things that is directly impacted by
tourism.
tourism.
I have another idea here. You ready?
I'm listening.
The city council approves the budget for the resort tax. And it's my understanding that when they present a budget, they do they have to spend every cent?
No,
No,
We
but
never
it
did.
does, but
Okay.
it is limited to being spent to the way that the voters
I
approve.
understand that.
Okay.
But the city council has the power to put it on the ballot
We do.
over the discussion from the resort tax. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
What if we proposed that resort tax cover a school resource officer?
I
You
would.
see where I'm going?
Yeah, no, I would let you guys discuss that amongst yourselves. One of the other things too that, I spoke with Danae about yesterday is our program with Lexipol currently
Mhm.
is, because we have them handle our policy and procedure, our standard operating procedure manual. We are entitled to a major price cut in having a grant writer on retainer, to which did they speak with you about this, sir?
Pardon?
Did they speak with you about this at all?
Did they, Danae?
Yeah.
Not yet, but I talked to Lexipol at the conference last week, so.
I did hear that we were entitled to a discount. I didn't think it was.
That, and
Enough.
to have a grant writer on retainer for the year, to which we could have them apply for 3 grants a year at an
Mhm.
incredibly reasonable price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, my
so
thought.
they would cover, hang on, I just wanna make sure I get this, so they would cover 3 grants a year,
Yes.
whether we got them or not, so it's not like 3 positive, I mean, they would
That's
just
a-
write 3
That's
grants.
a good question. That's something that I would have to ask.
Okay.
Danae is setting up our user account for the program,
Okay,
since yesterday, and the personnel that will have access to that user account is Lonnie, Danae, the mayor, and I.
okay.
And, that's a question that I will ask them. 3 positive
Yeah.
or 3 total?
Well, I know that, a school resource officer is usually very much so
Mm-hmm.
available for grants.
Yeah, it's a very
And
common,
like it's,
it's a
yeah,
very
it's very
common
common.
application, yeah.
When I
That-
talked to the gal from Lexipol, she says that they write so many of these, they're very experienced,
Yeah,
and they have a high rate of success.
correct, yeah.
And I would rather find a grant money to do a skill resource officer
I
before I
would-
would do
I would
resort
too.
tax, so.
I would too, if there has to be grants out there for that.
Oh, there's tons of them out
There
there.
has to
Yeah,
be.
there's tons of
There
them.
has to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In fact, that's how Miles City was able to save one of their police officers, is because it's a grant for a school resource officer. And they're doing like we do, where they work both,
75-25.
something like that, yeah. Because they lost 3 officers in budget cuts.
And if the school board isn't willing to pay 75%, which is kind of where they're waffling, it seems, and we did 50%, then we would have to likewise cut the number of hours that the police officer was at the school. You have to cut the services of the school resource officer.
That's-
You only wanna pay 50%,
That's a possibility, however.
only get.
The one fear that I have is that when there is a full-time school resource officer, it's, God forbid, the one day that they're not at school because of a budget issue or,
Yeah. Well, and if you have a grant to cover it, it actually covers the full salary typically, so you wouldn't have to do that. I mean, the grant would pay for it.
Correct.
Yeah,
And-
no, I'd rather go the grant routine, but that means this year is completely out.
My understanding from all the conversations I've had up to this point is that the 25-75 that we'd all talked to and agreed to is not a deal breaker, it's just a procedural. They've got to get together and talk and approve it. They're the equivalent of you guys for the school board. The school board is the council for the school district.
Mhm.
So they just need to do it, so.
They've been talking about this for 3 months, 4 months?
They haven't.
That's just it.
We've
It was
been talking
raised.
about it.
It was raised many months ago. That does not mean it's something they're talking about.
Yeah.
Just as there are things that we are working with on a council that are taking months before they work to the top of the pile and get, and done and completed, they have the same thing.
Yeah. My concern was this year as opposed to next.
I think it's still gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I'm very optimistic about it. It's just one of those things, if we have to wait, then we wait. I don't wanna get upset and turn my back. It's not, that won't benefit anybody.
Oh,
so.
no. Okay.
Just a sidestep, on that list that you provided us,
Yes, sir.
is it, would that fall under the normal category for a month? Is that just normal activity?
Yeah, a couple of them are kinda hit and miss. I'm sure I know the one that you're referring to. Those are hit and miss. They do pop up every once in a
Yeah.
while, several times a year.
Well, there were several items that caught my eye, and that's the reason I said, wow, does this go on all the time?
It's, you know, it's just, I wish I could say for sure, but it just depends. I mean, like, some of the busiest shifts I've ever been on are Wednesday afternoon shifts, you know? It's just, there's no way of telling.
The criminals don't have a habit, or
They don't have a work schedule, unfortunately, because then that would overstaff that shift, but,
They're working on a union, but.
yeah.
What electronic devices used in criminal activity?
I seized,
So,
large amount of cell phones and computers for child pornography.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Wow, 7.
Is this a list that we could publish to let people know?
it is, and, I apologize, my goal, and I've shared with the, chief that my goal is to, what we'll do is we'll publish it as part of the packet the first of every month.
Okay.
But for tonight, we'll make some hard copies available, for folks that are interested. The details, of course, are
Different.
not public information.
Right.
But I think it's important that we tell the story that, yes, we do need a police office, you know, we do need a police department, and yes, they are, and yes, it's interesting because, like I said, this is one of those departments that if they're doing their job appropriately, the less we hear about it almost, right?
You
And
hear
so,
nothing
to an
about it.
extent, we have to tell that, hopefully the word gets out in a sense that people aren't coming here because we're, a non-staff target area.
Well, we used to post these on under the police department every month.
That's fine.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I've been
you know, on the
using it the last
website.
couple of months.
Yeah,
Um,
and we can do that, we can get that
I
out
think,
there.
I think that would be good,
I-
to have it
well,
out there on the website.
I think it'd be very good. I think there's too many people that say we don't need police officers because they don't know this shit's going on.
Exactly,
The,
my complaint, my.
And if somebody is truly over curious about what we're doing, the criminal charges that have been filed are public record through,
True. Right.
through the, district court, through the city court, and through the justice of the peace court. At this time, is because it's not any type of press release, I'm not willing to give names, but those names are obtainable if somebody truly wants to know.
The problem is they don't go looking, so
No.
that's why,
The
that's why I
reporters
wanna
do.
put it in their face.
That's right, you gotta put it in.
No,
there.
we can put it online to do that, like I said, we've talked about that
I don't
already,
think,
we
I
just.
think the last one on there was from a long, long time ago.
I submitted one last month.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
That was online?
I don't know
No,
if
I
we've
meant
got
to
it
post
online.
it online.
I don't know the
No, we
online
will.
boundary on how to.
Yeah,
put
no,
that
it
stuff up
just,
there.
they were,
We had a conversation on it, but it was post-Friday send out, so
Okay.
we just need to catch up on it on the back end.
okay. Yeah, no, I didn't mean that you haven't done them, I meant it hasn't been posted online, yeah.
Like I
It's like
said-
from 2021 or something,
Okay.
maybe
You
even.
know, when we sat here and he kinda gave the highlights, it's no big deal, but when you look at that, it's like, wow.
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
kidding me? This, I
There was
mean,
only one 911 call?
No, what? Oh,
So some of the calls that come in, the nature of the call when it shows up on our screen, we'll say 911. That's how it starts out, and that could be anything. That could be
Right.
a car crash. So that's why I have my officers. I'm like, when you establish what happened, go back and change the nature of the call to what it actually was.
okay.
Because when a call pops up and it says 911, it kind of catches everybody's attention to get live updates and start towards where the problem or perceived problem is.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's just when they didn't get reclassified later on.
yeah, like a lot of times, like our domestic violence numbers are, and a lot of and like I coordinated with DSVS, and they're like, well, we'd like to run the numbers for our grant process, our federal grant process. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And then like this has since been remedied, but a few years back, dispatch would put it in as a disturbance call. So they'd send a couple of officers to a disturbance, and then it ends up being a domestic violence arrest. And the nature of that call was never changed to what the call truly was. It's kind of dead in the water at one point, but that, like I said, that has since been changed.
And the animal bite, was that a turkey?
No,
Two animal
that's,
bites.
gosh almighty, yeah, that's,
Turkey.
animal bites are common. Thankfully, it was a slow month for those, but, I mean, like, those are tedious. I mean, 'cause like, when they do show up to the hospital, they have a, what's the word? Obligation to notify, law enforcement because of the potential for, rabies infection.
Yep.
So we go there, we have to photograph, we have to take a report, we have to follow up with the animal owner to verify that the animal has had its rabies vaccination. If they haven't, we have to submit a report to the county health nurse, either way, even if the animal does or does not. And then if they do not, unfortunately for the person who was bit, they have to undergo the treatment, which is
Painful.
Yeah.
no fun.
Better than it was.
Yes, it was, yeah, it's true, it has changed.
My husband got bit by a rabid dog when he was 8,
Mm-hmm.
and
And-
those were the shots in the stomach.
In the abdomen, yep.
And
Yep.
a series of shots. The other boy that
Now it's site injection, I believe.
was bit with him,
Yeah.
his parents couldn't stand the tantrum and all of that, so they stopped, and the kid died.
Yes, there's only been one person in history that's ever survived rabies, and they were not sound.
And they're probably rabid now.
Yes.
Don't get bit by them.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think the point that's opening my eyes is just like that example. Look at the time consumed by a police officer.
By one animal bite.
I mean,
Yeah,
and then you look at that list, it's like, we don't have enough police to take care of all that.
Well, I would like to, for a future discussion item on the agenda is the amount of, loose dogs.
yeah.
And that just run around, they're constantly out. I mean, I would like to put some teeth into our ordinance so that,
So to speak.
so to speak, so, yeah, so that if they get caught, that they automatically get a dog at large ticket. I
Mhm.
mean, 'cause we're not, and if they get hauled down to Grizzly Peak, where we do we still have that?
We
Same
don't
with
have
them?
that MOU, and I'm glad you brought that
So I'd
up.
love to get that MOU in place
Yep, I
again.
spoke with their programs manager or director.
Yeah.
I have her name and contact information. I spoke with her last week because apparently there's just been a cache of dogs that have, like, it seems like simultaneously have gotten loose. Some
Yeah.
of them have resulted in animal abuse complaints because it appears that the dog was starving or something like that. But, I spoke with the, programs manager.
Are you on Beartooth Alliance or Grizzly Peak?
No, Grizzly Peak. They used to have an
Yeah,
MOU,
what-
they used to have an MOU with Grizzly Peak, where if there was a dog loose, and the county has the same MOU, they take it to Grizzly Peak boards it, and then when the owners are found, they have to pay the boarding bill.
Yeah,
So, it's not the city that pays it, it's the board.
sometimes it is,
It is, yeah, it can be, so
If they don't show up to do it.
correct.
then it goes to Beartooth Humane Alliance, and the dog is fostered and given up for adoption.
Yep,
I remember a conversation on this back when I was on council, and we did put one in place. I'll find out what the status of it is and what we
There-
need to do. That's
Yeah,
Sarah,
there was
yeah.
one in place, but I would love.
that's since lapsed. That's why I had
Yeah.
the conversation with the programs director the other day about she, would like to sit down with you and I and you. I'll be there. About, getting an MOU established, because, I mean, like, there's.
Because I remember we copied the county one, so.
Yeah, there's certain things in that MOU that I don't like, from a liability standpoint, one of them being,
Transporting the dog?
no, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they have reached out to me in the past and said that they want me to sign off on a euthanasia,
Oh.
form, and if I sign off on euthanizing somebody's dog when they later find out that the
No.
police chief did it, I'm not a fan of that. I think
No,
I've had a
that-
conversation
No,
with
That
so
shouldn't be your
that-
responsibility.
No, and that form is not, because we dealt with the same form when we had the the Red Lodge colony with the cats. They really work not to do that, but it's one of those that they're required to have. And it's basically, it's a, what's the word I'm looking for, merciful
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
thing. And it's whoever the
not going
owner is
Yeah,
has to sign off on that form. And I think,
and if there's no
Okay.
owner to be found, then,
Under what circumstances, that the dog was so badly treated?
Hit by a
No,
car.
or,
by a car,
yeah, it's hit by a car, or
They take- you
it's-
take-
it's
yeah.
not,
the police
not
take it off
survivable.
the road
And I think I will do that. Dennison, if you would pull up our historical one that we've had and kind of find that and see if there's any concerns on that.
have it too.
I will reach out to them and let's
I-
get that conversation going.
Yeah, I would attend that meeting too.
Sure.
If you, because I think would be where we'd help with that.
Yeah,
too.
opinions differ too on
Yeah.
euthanasia, where I might think it's the right thing to do, other dog
Well,
owners may not.
I know.
Well,
I,
yeah.
unfortunately, I mean, I grew up on a ranch, and there's a point where you
You gotta do it.
gotta do it.
Yep,
Because it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
yeah.
But,
Dennison, would that be a resolution that we need to do to authorize the mayor, or would that just be an action, just authorize the mayor to sign? How would you
Yeah.
recommend it?
The MOU?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's just resolution.
resolution to
Yeah.
sign MOU?
But but I guess my point is like, I think if we start doing this, start sorting their pocketbook a little bit instead of just, oh, it's on Facebook, I'll go get my dog. You know, it's like, well, now you have to pay boarding fees, now you have to, here's your dog at large ticket, and you get enough dog at large tickets, maybe they'll keep their dogs in their yard. You know?
Yeah.
So I saw a conversation that I saw something this in, it was like people were surprised that, there were people who did not know
No.
we had dog licenses.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, I think it all needs to have some more teeth. I guess.
And the dog statutes in Red Lodge need to be rearranged anyway, they need to be updated.
Okay. And that would be our
That's been a conversation
committee.
that's been going on for 4 years.
Yeah, there's,
So council, if you would
Okay.
look at our code,
Okay,
go into our local code and look up dog or animal or
Yeah.
a couple of those things and pull those out. I know we've gotten input from our attorney and also the judge,
We have like,
about some things they'd like to have revisited.
yeah,
we have like 4 different rough drafts already prepared,
okay.
so.
Can you send those to
To
us,
us?
please?
That'd be great.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's also, of course, I think they're all together in the animal, aren't they, including the feeding of wildlife and
Yeah, it
the
needs to be
garbage?
updated where it's not just dogs, but also cats, we ran into that one.
Yeah,
several times.
Yeah.
Several times.
yeah,
So,
for,
Is it only domestic animals?
yeah, we could expand the scope, so it talks about, pets.
So council chair, this would be great to have this be an agenda item.
Yeah, I've got
until
You
it
can
gets
feed
done.
your own animals, you cannot start your own colony in your front yard with everybody else's animals. It's
Yes.
kind of what-
right.
We're not mentioning names, but.
No,
No, no, yeah.
Did this whole conversation start because?
Of the dog bites.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was roaming too many dogs.
No, there was dog bites on here, or, animal bites,
Okay.
so,
There were 2 animal bites, and there were also, 5 animal complaints
Yeah.
and 2 animal abuse.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I'm just thinking, if you're gonna require an owner to have their dog on a leash,
it is a requirement now.
well, I'm just seeing
Yeah.
people that walk their dogs and their dogs supposply walk beside them or within 10 feet or 20
Yeah.
feet.
That's against our city ordinance right
Yeah,
now.
and see, that's gonna not go over well, how you have to write.
Well,
it.
there's also still officer discretion, but,
Yeah,
Well, I'm saying, I have 2 huskies and they're always on a leash, always,
Right.
no exceptions.
Huskies have to be.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, they're
Yeah.
pack dogs, they run.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this is our 3rd set, we know how, we take care of them.
You're a responsible pet owner.
But we have neighbors that let their dogs run around,
Yeah,
and
and that's against our city ordinance.
then there's dogs that just are let out and get to run on their own, and then there's owners that walk within 20, 30 feet of them. I mean, there's all kinds of situations.
I see that a lot, but the problem with that, even though the dog is well-minded and,
Right,
and
that's it.
walking with them,
Yep.
all you need is a deer or a moose to run by or something that triggers
Or
Yeah,
another
their
dog.
usual flight.
oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally agree.
No, I'm not really thinking we need to, change what we have in place, you know, dogs are supposed to be on a leash, dogs, you know, there's a reason why has been that way forever. It's just, we need to put some teeth into it.
Yeah.
Start
So-
enforcing it.
A
Yep.
bigger fine,
A
maybe?
bigger fine,
Yep.
and then if your dog is, you know, all over town, you know, if it gets, somebody finds it, you know, rather than it's just posted on Facebook, like, it needs to go down to Grizzly
Yeah.
Peak, be boarded, and you have to pay
Yeah.
for it.
And this applies to cats as well?
No, cats are not part of that ordinance
Okay.
at all.
But I think that was part of the comment is,
The cat,
that are, as we revisit the ordinances, we need to say pets. So if there's cats, snakes, gators, whatever,
Domesticated animals.
yeah, so,
or
so-
pets,
domestic-
they're not all
Yeah,
domesticated.
I would say
So-
pets.
cats,
We've run into people with pet raccoons and.
That's what
I
I'm
know.
saying.
Name it.
yeah.
That's why I
Yeah.
would call it,
Seriously,
that's
Yeah.
why I'd call it a pet.
yeah, yeah.
But the thing with, the cats where they wanted, the Humane Alliance wanted pets as a whole was because of the feral cat colonies. Because they had we really didn't have a lot of
The
teeth
Humane
to go.
Alliance really tried their best on that one.
I know,
They did. I felt bad for them at the end.
just trying to, you know, it's more of an abuse type or a over
It was
number
more of a, it
animal-
was more of a public
health
health
and,
issue.
yeah,
I think is what I charged.
Just neglect and.
yeah.
Well, they feed those cat colonies. Well, we know who does.
Yeah, no, I know, I just, so,
And they have reduced, I mean, 'cause, you know,
I haven't heard much about it
I'm
in
in
the
that
last year.
area. I don't see them
Yeah.
like I used to,
yeah.
as much as we used to see them.
You hear them at night?
We
My dogs do.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a situation that just in the last 2 weeks, I started noticing a cat on the outside of our back fence in the brush.
Uh-huh,
And I, you know, thought that was odd, and I talked to my wife about it. And our dogs are just very curious, they can't get to it because of the fence.
right,
But for 2 weeks it's been there, so my wife took a picture of it, put it on Facebook. And a few days later, the lady calls, "Oh, that's my cat."
Yeah.
"Okay, you want to come in?" "Oh, she's right here on my lap." Apparently, she just lets her out every day, and it comes home every day.
that's what cats do,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
cats do.
Is that,
That's indoor, outdoor cats.
but are we
that's
gonna have
what
an
they do.
ordinance, is that against?
That,
You'll
would
never-
you would get a major public backlash.
Yeah.
You cannot enforce that.
But, yeah, and I guess the whole thing is-
Like-
My mom had her cat on a leash.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough, dogs, cats, it's gonna be tough because people have their own opinion of how they treat
Well,
their
dogs out running around are
More
more,
problem.
yeah, more of a problem.
I
They
agree.
chase deer, they chase,
They
yeah,
run into
they
the
chase
fence, and you
kids.
run them over, and then you
Yeah.
feel bad.
Yeah,
Cats usually typically run away unless you try to go up to them and pick them up, and they're not nice,
Well,
but,
we,
you know.
we did talk to a couple of our neighbors.
Yeah,
About
angry
their
cats
dogs.
are terrifying.
No, I know.
We talked to a couple of neighbors whose dogs, quote unquote, go out. I said, "You've got to come pick up their shit. You
Yeah.
know, they poop in my yard and you just leave it alone?" No.
Yeah,
they-
well, and that's another thing, that is in the ordinance too, they need to pick up
Well,
after their dogs.
Well, once we talked to them, no, we didn't have any other problems.
Yeah.
We don't have neighbors now, but.
Yeah. There you go. What'd you do to him, Doug?
Don't ask.
Euthanize them?
Don't
No.
ask.
So just to clear up and keep us on track, I've got 3 action items out of
Okay.
here. So far, I've got police reports on the website,
Yep.
MOU with Grizzly Peak, picked up, revisited, renewed, and then the committee and then council's gonna basically take up the dog and pet issues,
Yeah, the
So,
ordinance.
ordinances
Right.
and do that. And, from an action side, the chief and I will talk about, making sure that we are appropriately prioritizing and handling pet issues as they come up.
Well, I think it'll be much
Get a
easier if you
feel.
get that MOU in place, because then you can actually take the animal somewhere if you so need to.
And that's why we have that listed as an action item
Yeah.
as well.
Out of curiosity, on all of these calls for service, are these from residents, or what percentage of these are from visitors?
It varies. It varies. There's no way to tell. I would say mostly residents.
But that also includes outside of Red Lodge. Yeah.
Yeah, that 5 mile.
Yep.
I was just curious whether,
Yeah.
these are what our residents are doing: death threats, sexual offense, sexual abuse of children. Mental health, I understand there's only one.
6 hit and runs.
Yeah.
That surprised me.
Was that not necessarily people, it could be have an accident, leave?
A hit and run could be somebody from purposely and knowingly hitting a vehicle and then leaving the scene with the knowledge, I just struck this vehicle and damaged it. I would
Parking.
either have insurance or a license, or I don't want the financial repercussions, so I'm gonna leave. Or somebody just completely oblivious,
Yeah.
tapping a vehicle and
That-
then leaving. I mean, we've seen both sides, you know, the gal that's, poor guy, that is older and taps a vehicle, and they just have no clue, because they're driving a Lincoln Town car.
Didn't feel a
And they-
damn thing.
Yeah, and these new cars are made out of fiberglass, I mean, geez, when you hit them.
They just shatter.
Yeah, you don't even feel it in your steel vehicle.
Well,
yeah.
Parallel parking is a big thing for that, or, you
It's
know,
also a skill set,
yeah.
apparently.
That some have and some do not.
Some have and some don't, yeah.
Does that also include hitting property?
Yes,
So a hit and run, somebody comes and runs over your fence and leaves?
yeah, these types of hit and runs that we're dealing with, the majority of them are vehicle on vehicle. Yeah, but yes, there are hit and runs where somebody, you know, smokes a power pole and takes off, or,
But you could find them really easily because of the big hole in the front.
yeah, pretty easily, they'll bust out their oil pan, and then you'll find the car 3 blocks away.
The parking complaints,
Mhm.
is that anything like, you know, camper parking or just parking because,
It could be anything.
okay.
You
Parking in the yellow,
in the yellow.
parking the wrong way on the street.
I
It
just,
could be anything.
it's just because we have so many campers, you know,
Mhm.
parked on the street that, you know, I didn't know if people were starting to report them or was it,
Sometimes, yeah, those are reported and those are handled. It's just, yeah, it's just one of those things where it could be motor vehicle, it could be an RV, it could be a trailer that's left, without a vehicle attached to it. It's sitting there for a while. It could be a vehicle that just hasn't moved.
are any of those stolen,
Sometimes, sometimes
you know?
we'll find a vehicle and it'll come back stolen, and then we contact the agency and, that holds the geographical jurisdiction on, of where it was stolen, and we'll do what we call a courtesy process and make sure that there's not anything like terrible inside of the vehicle, and then,
Dead body in the trunk?
Oh, my God.
I wasn't gonna say it, you did,
Okay.
but, or drugs, or, stolen firearms, anything, yeah.
And the seizure, you had one firearm?
Mm-hmm.
Is that because they were,
They
Threatening?
committed a felony,
uh,
Yeah.
a felon with a firearm?
soon to be felon.
Okay, have we heard anything else about, have you been able to get, probably not, you've been pretty busy, about additional stop signs or more traffic control?
No, I haven't visited that yet. I'll have to get with Mike and discuss that. Probably the number one area is Adams Avenue South.
So what happened to the one we put on the end of town, the temporary one?
The,
That was the speed feedback sign?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back out on, it's being placed just further south of where it originally was this last week.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, we can't keep it in one spot for the entire year. We do have to move it around.
Sure.
And like I said, it's based on complaint.
Well, it's more effective moving it around.
I'd say so.
How long does
Well,
the battery
we will
last?
have permanent ones too, but I think until we get those, it's advantageous to kind of see where the different spots work too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Chief, did you say that is out, or that'll be out today, or what's the,
It's out today.
okay,
Yeah.
it is already out,
Soon to be, I believe.
okay.
Yeah.
I looked for it yesterday and did not see it, so.
So I'm putting in I put in an order for it this morning to be moved.
Do we need to buy a second set of batteries so that they could always be charged and just be swapped out, or what's our turn? Because my concern is just when it goes down and it's out for a week or two, particularly given the visibility on it.
We could, we certainly could,
My question is with that, let me rephrase it. The expectation is that it's in use. Do we need to get 2 additional batteries to make sure it's in use more, or do we just need to improve our process?
I think honestly, it's not a tool that's out 365 days a year. It's one of those things to where buying an additional set of batteries for $200, I don't know, personally don't think it's worth it. Professionally don't think it's worth it either. It's just, it would seem like, because it's just, it does solve problems when problems do arise, but, I mean, like, we don't have that many ongoing speed problems. I mean, like, I know people have discussed it before, people's perception of speed is very different than what the actual speed is, especially on a narrow road, or especially when they're crossing the street, you know?
I guess what I would like to offer is the guidance that I get that it floats and that it moves, but I think the idea that it's not necessarily out 365 days a year, I would say that we have places where we know we can put it, particularly as we're kind of testing where to put the long-term ones.
Mhm.
So if it needs to move to someplace because of a particular complaint, let's do that.
Yeah.
But if it's not in one of those spots, it should be at one of our entrances in a spot
It's going to the
that helps.
south, it's going to the south entrance today.
Right, okay. And I'm just saying in general, I'd like to see it out there.
Yeah.
Particularly as we're using resort to buy permanent taxes, I'd like to see us using the tools we have.
Mhm.
You guys weren't at the last meeting, but, Steve Smith was here.
And this is
And
the fifth and
Yeah,
Nordhausen.
yeah, and
I have that on there
Okay,
because.
good. I just wanted to make sure you got, we had asked him to send an email so that we could
Yeah,
forward it to you
no,
guys,
and
so.
I was just waiting for a comment, because that's one that, and I think a line would make sense, or at least when it's not covered up with snow there.
Yeah.
And I'll follow up with staff on that, although I think you were on it as well.
Yeah, I sent it, and I sent it.
But that, I looked to the two department heads, to come back and confirm that that's a good idea or not a good idea, and make a recommendation.
Just wanted to make sure you guys got it.
Yep, I
So-
did, and I was just waiting for a break in the conversation to acknowledge that I got it.
I'm sorry, what, is this Hauser and Fifth?
Mhm. Yeah, there's a stop sign there, and, Steve was here with another lady from that area. They live right there, and, people blow through that stop sign all
Yeah,
the
'cause
time.
I had a call from a lady that lives there,
Yeah.
again, she called about 6 months ago, and we discussed as a group, but she called again, probably 2 weeks ago, and said the same thing. Has anything been done yet? I said, no, we've got quite a few areas that we're studying to see which, where the significant problems are, and we're addressing them.
Yeah, well,
If it's the same lady,
Answer.
if it's the same lady that I'm thinking of, something has been done. I've voluntarily gone down there for a half, of a shift.
Okay.
For 5 hours and enforce that speed limit, or excuse me,
That stop sign?
the stop sign.
And what was your observation from your?
People do roll it, but blowing it, I didn't see that, but people do roll it, for sure.
And I know it's in the winter, particularly northbound at that intersection.
Slippery.
That is the slickest
Yeah.
intersection in town, and
I've slippery.
I've slid a block
Mm-hmm.
in that location.
Yeah, no, you're not kidding. I have too.
And how fast were you going to slide this block?
Reasonably.
Under 15, but you can be doing 10 and touch your brakes, and granted, it was, but I literally start slowing for that one a block before I get to it, because anything less and you can go through it. It's just an ice.
Analog brakes could either be the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the what brakes?
and I love
Analog brakes could either
yeah.
be the greatest thing in the
Yeah.
world or the worst thing in the world, and at an intersection like that, they're not helpful.
Yeah, it's one of those that we sand and maintain just because we have an awareness that it's for whatever reason, the way it catches the sun, it's just an icy spot.
Yeah.
So, and as we go into the season, just to reiterate the expectation that we set last year, that the officers do have the, and I will follow up with Mike and make sure, because this was one of the things that happened before, but officers, do have the right, I don't know if when an officer
Discretion?
calls and reports that we need to be sand,
Yeah.
we should respond. You guys, your officers need to understand that they have that ability, and as long as they don't abuse that, but if they say, this is a corner that needs attention, if there is a disagreement between the department heads, it will be sanded and the follow-up conversation will take place between the department heads, but it will get sanded in the meantime.
Yeah, it will not be abused anymore.
I don't know that I've ever seen it be, abused historically. The answer is sand it, the department heads will take up a conversation. If we have a public works person who doesn't agree that it was necessary, great, raise it to Mike, the department head, and he'll take it up with Chief Strock.
Yep.
And if for some reason you guys are unable to do it, then we'll bring in,
But yeah, I mean,
me
if
as
you see
the
people-
APEC referee.
Mike's very easy to work with,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see people, or the police officer slides through it, then yeah, it probably needs to be sanded. I know, so.
Or the mayor slide through it?
It's not a good look for us, but
Yeah.
it is a very slick intersection, and
This is
probably the
Nathan
dozen
Adams?
times that it happened, we're all.
No, it's Fifth and Hauser.
Oh, Fifth and, okay.
Fifth and Hauser going northbound.
Yeah, I know.
Southbound, you're, I think, okay.
I don't have an issue on it, but like I said, I have literally, for testing purposes, touched the brakes a block away at under
Well,
10 miles
if
an hour and am
Split.
off to the side 4 feet and before it stops. It's just, I have
Well-
never, short of driving on a lake, I have never seen that level of physics.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of foliage up there and stuff like that where, and the
It's in
hill,
shade.
so it's probably shaded a lot
Yeah,
on
I
that
think it's the
one
way that just captures the sun, so.
yeah.
We'll do that, but like I said, and we
Like
will
by
reiterate.
Fox is always icy.
What's that?
Fox is always icy. There's always a patch of ice.
Oh,
down there.
northbound going,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's always a patch of ice right there in the wintertime.
and giant potholes.
And that's probably, yeah.
Well, the
Looks like-
potholes
Looks
slow
like a
people
mortar
down.
hit the middle of 212.
It's not supposed to on the highway.
You hit that at 70 miles an hour in the summertime, you gotta go to rapid tire right after.
No. Oh, I couldn't.
All right.
Okay, and so the resort tax that I had on here, that further discussion was whether or not it could conceivably be used for an SRO, and regardless
Yeah.
of what the resort tax
Well, And
committee
we had actually changed it too,
has.
so.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I would like to see it currently, I mean, like, number one, what I'd like to see is, we've already budgeted for our portion of the salary. What I would like to see is the school and the city move forward with it. If that doesn't work, I would like to see grants. If that doesn't work, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm optimistic that it'll go the way as originally planned.
I would think so.
Yeah.
So it's just typical bureaucratic slowdown
Well,
on their behalf?
yeah, that's part of why it hasn't been approved here. The other problem we have, and it was actually discussed, at the conference, is the general budget impact we have where, currently, we're capped at 1/2 the rate of inflation over the last 3 years, which is a relatively new thing. It's in the last 20 years. And it's evident of the impact that's having. And so, there's a couple of legislative actions that are revisiting that, but that impacts basically public safety because that's a large share of our general budget. There were several different conversations. I was surprised to hear, some of the other areas. Our problems are somewhat minimal compared to what other folks have. The thing that was interesting, I learned a few things that I wasn't aware of, or I knew and then I forgot. I think is probably more accurate on some of them. There's a lot of cities that actually go with the county to do it. And it was interesting to find out, and I knew when we looked at it from the county coverage here, there were issues in that they won't enforce city ordinances at all. There's basically 2 titles of state
Right.
ordinances that they'll do. And so I felt very fortunate that we have the working relationship we do between county law enforcement and our law enforcement. There was a couple of other things. So, the police, you are required to have police, which I don't know that I did know. And so it is a requirement we have coverage. It doesn't mean it can't be provided through outside sources. You are required to have a police chief, and the police chief is required to report to the mayor. So even where there's city managers, administrators statutorily, that position reports to the mayor. And looking at some of the challenges, that, like I said, there were several comments and on funding, and I've got a couple of follow-up conversations with Thomas, who's the league attorney. One of the things I wanted to do is, that I had written down, is I wanted to get with the chief to work on our interlocal for dispatch, because that was something else that a lot of people had that didn't work out well. And I guess I wasn't I wasn't familiar with it. And then there's another Senate bill that just impacts our taxable value that was inversely affecting it too.
So, what we were talking about, future funding options, so, for the police, and it's also for public safety in general. When the fire department is up for renegotiation this next
Next
year?
year.
Okay. So that maybe we can get that off mills and put it to a dollar amount rather than.
Yeah.
And then, I think we do need to decide, moving forward, which option we want to pursue. We need guidance from the whole council. Do we want to, apparently you can do a public safety district, correct?
So there's
That-
three, when you talk about raising the taxes, there's actually a couple different ways. So one of them is we can send it to the voters, which
Right,
is the most democratic.
right.
However, there's also an option, much like the SID, except it's a special district. And I want to say, is that, I didn't write down the number on it. But you have the option of, the council can pass a special district. And basically what they do is you define the boundaries, you do a notice of intent. This is what we're going to do. You allow, I want to say it's 30 days for public to issue. If you get less than 50%, then council votes on it. So you can basically put that raise in place just by council. And to be fair, it's a mechanism that is specifically done to facilitate municipalities to be able to raise taxes because they didn't call it a fee, but there's another, I think it's just an assessment, but it's in essence, it's a tax to me by all means. There is a mechanism in place that allows council to do it more easily than going to the public. Does that mean you do it or you don't do it? I don't know. Now you get into philosophies and politics and what's the right answer.
So the council could propose a special district.
The
There'd be a notice of
council could
intent.
create it, it's not even a proposal, so they can go, you can put an additional funding source in place going strictly with council without going to the public. Now,
And
does that mean we'll all have our head on spears on the entrance to town the following week? I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
But then you said then there's a notice of intent, and so like.
That's just part of the process.
So public has 30 days or so to, and if you get less than 50% of the public, what was that about?
So what happens is, once you do a notice of intent, and I can get the regulations and share with you, once you do a notice of intent, the public has an opportunity to weigh in, and there's 2 or 3 options, if it's like less than X. If more than 50%,
Weighs in.
weigh in and say no, you're not allowed to touch it for a year. But that's also never gonna happen,
But if less
realistically
than
speaking.
50% of the people complain and say, no way, the council then would have a vote.
Yeah, so then what happens, let's take it to the extreme, too. So you could have 45% of the population say, absolutely no way, this is a tax increase, and no, I don't want it, don't you dare. Council still has the option of creating that special district, and it is something that is assessed on their taxes with everything else as well. So council does have the mechanism to do that, but like I said, then you look at it and say, if you have that much of a weigh-in, I would say don't. But like when we did the special improvement district, we got 2 letters out of the entire thing, and I was ready to vote no on it if we hit like 11% or I had done some math in my head about how many people actually elected the last president. What is representative of the body, and it's a relatively low number. But if you get 2 or 3 people who complain and nobody else does, there is a mechanism that you can get there completely under council without having to go to the ballot and to the vote. And I'm just saying, A, the mechanism exists. B, we need to carefully consider whether we want to utilize that or not, but it does exist.
So,
Anything you wanna add to that, Dennison, or is that a fair summarization?
so, I just brought that up because I think that that would be a last-ditch effort. I mean, you know, that we would do. But I think,
Kind of sneaky.
but I really want, number one, I think we should apply for every grant out there that we can to help fund our police department, period. Whether, you know, school resource officer, which will also help, and the more we can take, you know, even for, you know, the day-to-day expenses that come, you know, everything that we can for grants, I guess, but,
Every single thing that you guys need.
yeah, that we can. Because I think we have to show a good faith effort by the city that we're actually, and this is kind of what the Resort Tax Committee was getting at. It's like, you haven't asked for a vote on public safety, you haven't tried to annex in the fire department, you know, you're just going for the low-hanging fruit. And if you take the resort tax, something else will have to be cut.
Well,
So
you told
what-
me that there was $800,000 that they hadn't used.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
thinking there, I don't
No,
have to not do anything. You guys didn't spend $800,000 of the money that you were given through resort tax.
no, that's not
No,
quite
no,
exactly
there's-
true, that was in reserve.
Well,
That's not-
that's a
But
really
it's not,
hefty
some- but
reserve.
it's not something we get every year.
Do you empty your checking account every single week?
$800,000.
Well,
That's almost their entire budget.
But
Their
it's-
entire
it's-
budget is 1.2 million. 800,000 they had in reserve.
No, that was built up over time. We do not get $800,000 extra every year.
But
So
when
they,
I'm talking about the
well,
police department, I'm talking maybe 100,000.
but you're also talking about an ongoing commitment. You're not talking about a one-time expense. So like,
Right.
for instance, we're buying a
Right.
vac truck.
Yeah,
We're spending it, we're done.
yeah.
We also remember that we budget more than what we anticipate we're gonna collect, so we
Exactly.
don't go to waste too.
Yeah.
So don't let, and we don't have that issue. We did determine that we were carrying too high of a reserve,
Yeah,
but we wanna make sure that we also have several things that are obligated.
I understand.
Um,
I understand all the obligations, but when I see a reserve of $800,000, I'm thinking, you know, then obviously you don't have to cut anything out of the budget in order to include some reserve, some police officers in there.
I
but
agree.
you saw pass, we don't have it anymore.
Right.
Well, there's 300,000 in there now, which is
Right.
fine. It's a
we,
nice
we have
reserve.
we have to keep a reserve because we have obligations moving forward. And if we have a
Cash
year where,
flow.
yeah, well, no, it's not just that. If we have a year where the pass is closed all summer again, and we don't get that, we have an obligation,
We have obligations.
obligations that have to be met. And it's close to $1 million worth of obligations a
I thought we added
year.
it up and it was 600,000.
No.
We're at the end of our time, but let's go back to where this conversation started, which is like I said, there's a voter option,
Right.
and then there's this
Either way,
option.
it
So
would be
you,
a voter option.
no, there's an option that isn't a voter's option, but what I don't feel good about, the reason the council thing is, I think warrants a discussion, or certainly warrants looking at it twice before you move forward with it, is you don't go to the voters and say, do you want this, yes or no? The voters say no, and then you come back and do the council-only approach. That just, again, that ends up with heads on spears in the entrance
That's
to
not
town.
good. No.
And so I think we review it and we look at it. And part of that other conversation was,
This is the three-
are we artificially, should our,
That's-
and not
that's
that
an
this is
obligation.
popular either, but our water and sewer rates,
For reserve.
should they be higher so that we're not depending on resort tax
That's what our budget
to
is.
help? Right now, our
That would
resort
be
tax
200.
lowers our water and sewer
Right,
rates,
right.
End of year cash.
so.
So, yeah, so our obligation for resort tax every year is just over $1 million. And we bring in, last year we brought in 1.3 on the 3%.
But what happens if we bring in 700?
Yeah,
So that's why we carry 300,000, at least three, it was determined to carry at least 300,000.
and that to me is reasonable. To me, it was the 800,000, it was
Yeah.
like, wait a second, you know, that's over the top.
Well, and to be fair, we did bring in, we had a good year finally in
Yeah.
2023, and we brought in, you know, we had
Brought in.
yeah, we had brought in an extra, so,
We've
And-
got to have another
Yeah.
meeting started
Yeah.
in 3 minutes.
okay.
Okay,
So, yes,
fine. We're done.
Okay, thank
Do you want this?
Follow up in between breaks.
I
Sorry,
want,
I think I'm going to make copies and give it to everybody tonight.
oh, I
Did you
think the
adjourn?
mayor's going, yeah.
Are you going to?
Pardon?
I
Yeah,
was gonna make-
I've already got that, and we'll have